Honkai Star Rail on Acheron, Firefly, and time loops. Now, if you guys were here on Tuesday when we had our big story and lore discussion, then you already know why there may be a time loop theory going on with HSR. So, and shout out to Marco Woods. Marco wrote up a pretty decent article in my opinion. Now, again, I don't necessarily agree with everything that is in this article, but it is an interesting think piece. So, please be aware that this article contains spoilers for the missions included in Honkai Star Rail 2.0. Make sure to play through the Trailblaze mission before continuing to read. Chat, this is your last warning, and we're reading it, okay? Update 2.0 for HSR came out last week and enchanted players with a storyline that unexpectedly was not as positive and wholesome as certain writers advertised beforehand. We knew what you were up to. Yeah, chat, they lied to our face, okay? It was never positive and fun. Full of mind-bending twists and turns, the Trailblaze mission also contained a couple deaths, which took unsuspecting players by surprise. While we can't be sure about how permanent these deaths are going to be, since everything happened inside a dreamscape, they certainly did their job by captivating the minds of players and getting them a lot more invested in the lore. So, definitely not fun. They lied straight to us, and yes, we saw that a couple certain characters passed away, but as this states, how permanent this is part of what we've been speculating on because it's happened in the dreamscape, and we've heard from multiple people within the game that what happens in the dream world does not necessarily affect what happens in reality, okay? While I take my crack at explaining HSR 2.0 on a character-by-character basis, many fan theories have popped up ever since the version became playable for the public. Some pose very intriguing explanations for strange events unfolding before us and are worth discussing in detail, such as HoYoLab user time loop theory. Now, chat, the theory that we have talked about thus far has involved the Eon of Finality Termitus. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. But, chat, what's their name? But anyway, the Eon of Finality and the fact that we were told that Acheron may be an emanator and us putting together pieces, Terminus. Okay, thank you. It zoomed in, so yeah, we do talk about that quote though. But anyway, if Acheron is an emanator of finality, just like the Eon, she may be moving through time in a different means than we, the Trailblazer, are. Meaning, we're moving from the present into the future, and she could be moving from the future backwards into the present, or essentially backwards through time. This theory is slightly different than that. Okay, so the theory that all events in Penacony are somehow happening in a time loop, which would provide elegant solutions to two puzzles we've all been contemplating. Namely, why Firefly apologized to us in her dying moment, and why Acheron keeps asking us the same strange questions. So, why does she apologize here? This is what we're hoping to address. When something unto death, aka like the creepy monster, appears in the reverie, it seems to target Firefly specifically. What's more, Firefly seems to be waiting for the monster to show up, not resisting as it's coming towards her. Unlike when she's first grabbed by it in a child's dream, where we can see her clenching her fist before Black Swan comes to rescue. Now, I do have multiple feelings on this, as you guys know from our discussion on Tuesday. I think she was clenching her fist, maybe for a more copium reason, but if the theory is true that Firefly and Sam are but one and the same, I think maybe she was reaching for something to activate her bioengineered mech suit in order to bust through. What I find more interesting from this, angle, from this perspective, is that she's resisting when she's trying to clench her fist. Now, that resisting could still include bursting off into Sam, but the difference between her at least seeming to resist versus accepting her fate, which if we go back and watch that cutscene, that thing is beelining straight towards her, and I mean, what even could she do, right? So it's not like she's fighting back, but to be honest, in either instance, how could she? Dude, that is a crazy emote. Crazy emote. Plot twist, Acheron has dementia. Crazy. TNT, I've not done that one yet, but I have heard about it. I am interested in starting it. So our, HoloLab writer, Suruzu, believes that Firefly's death wasn't an accident. It was her sacrificing herself to somehow help uncover the truth of what's going on. Her apology is for hurting Trailblazer, who was put through the trauma of losing someone dear to them. Suruzu invokes the title of Robin's song we hear in the rooftop scene with Firefly, "If I Can Stop One Heart from Breaking." Firefly is hoping that her apology is enough to do this for us. Now, this is where I think this theory is like reaching its levels of copium. If the idea is that it is tied to the song, then how is Firefly essentially risen us up and then knowing, oh, I got a GG's right in front of you, stopping a heart from breaking? I would say they would need to change the title of the song to "If I Can Guarantee That One Heart Breaks" would be a way more appropriate song title. But, you know what I mean? In general, though, I do like the idea of this time loop and that Firefly is somehow invested or already like integrated within this time loop and is doing something to change it / change the course of what could be happening on these alternative timelines. We'll play the Wordle as soon as we get done with this article right here. What brings the possibility of a time loop into play is what we witnessed during our investigation into Firefly's last hours. She tries to calm herself down as if having to make a difficult decision that makes her nervous and says, "If I could try again." Perhaps dying at that moment was what Firefly needed to do to try again and get closer to the heart of the matter next time. Now, whether we believe this or not, I do think this kind of ties in to the theory that we did talk about on stream. If Firefly has, well, we do know that she's got some sort of health condition. I forget what it's called, chat. If you guys remember, can you guys put it in the chat? But some sort of health condition that would lead us to the idea that her operating within the Sam mecha suit could be a real thing. She does mention that because of her condition outside of the dreamscape, she likes to venture into the dreamscape and be herself because she can't do that. Entropy, thank you, she's got entropy. She can't do that in the real world. Now, if the theory that she is inside Sam's mech suit or their conscious is essentially one and the same, it could have been that she died on purpose, knowing, hey, this thing's gonna try to kill me right here, and then come back. Yeah, she's very philanthropic. And then come back, as big badass Sam to essentially throw hands. I know that a tragedy is going to occur here. I will take on that tragedy myself, maybe rather than the Trailblaze having it happen to him or somebody else, and then return to the scene of the crime, ready to throw hands. Again, this is all, varying levels of copium, but just trying to explain through. More solid evidence for time somehow being screwed with comes from Acheron. She says that she's got a cracked memory. She's super cracked at memory. And I initially put this down as possibly having been arranged by Black Swan, since the two seem to know each other. However, if Acheron experiences time loops and has already seen the entirety of the story play out, then both her memory troubles and the questions she asked Trailblazers after first encountering them make a lot more sense. Now, again, the theory that we had is if she is moving backwards through the timeline, then all of those questions are essentially things that have happened in her past but have yet to happen in our future, which is why they don't make sense to us. She's experienced it, we haven't gotten there yet. If the time loop theory turns out to be accurate, it's essentially the same idea but packaged in a different way. Yo, Huss, thank you for the follow. So Suruzu theorizes that Acheron asks these questions to establish where Trailblazer currently stands in the timeline and what they remember. Asking questions like, have we met somewhere before, are elegantly covered by the fact that many Hoyoverse fans will indeed have met Acheron before, either as Raiden Mei in Honkai Impact 3rd or Raiden Shogun in Genshin Impact. It's phrased to make us think it's just a reference to those characters. Now, although I do agree that it is a cool cover-up, everybody here is a big brain gamer, so none of us were fooled by this initially. Yes, it does at face value seem like, oh, haha, the character with the exact same face, body type, and katana as these other characters that we know from other Hoyo games is just making a funny. However, I do like this idea more, right? If it's because she's on an alternative timeline, whether you think that she's simply moving in the opposite direction of us, or there's just multiple timelines occurring at once, and she can somehow hop these timelines, either way, it does give more rationale behind why she's saying the things she's saying, and specifically why they are in red as opposed to the normal white text that we're used to. Firefly single-handedly carried all the lore? Nah, all the characters I think were very integral. Possible theory to explain Acheron's strange questions. We both have amnesia and we did not meet before. Yeah, maybe that is the answer. Before Acheron slices Trailblazer to send us back to reality on the Astral Express, this is after like the initial encounter, or more precisely perhaps the start of the time loop. Remember that Trailblazer is crying as if they just lost somebody dear to them, and is what is waiting for us at the end of the story. She foretells that we'll live through many tragedies and will see glimpses of red when making choices despite the world becoming monochrome. So that's essentially just like the reference to everything that happened when we first entered Penacony, but we were actually experiencing the memoria of traveling to Penacony. Some of Acheron's text is of course displayed in red, while her tears also seem to contain red fluid. An interesting observation players made is that when you try to refuse Acheron as an escort through the reverie repeatedly, the choice will eventually be taken from you. One of the two answers agreeing to Acheron's suggestion supporting red. Hoyoverse isn't shy about the time loop stories. In Sumeru Arc and Genshin, there's a prominent example. So the Samsara, which a lot of people have pointed, Sam, Samsara, maybe that is a tie-in. And with all of Penacony's clock imagery being so present everywhere, it would make a lot of sense thematically. Some examples of that would be the technique of Misha, who can stop time, and the powers ascribed to Clocky. The cartoon character can manipulate time as well, according to the lore found in Hanu's adventure books. So the thing that I'd like to point out here that may be a little bit different or adjacent to the idea being proposed here is the fact that not only are we the only people that we know of that can see and interact with Clocky, we are also the only people that can see and interact with Misha. And then Misha and Clocky can see each other as well, because Misha is, you know, stuck in a same version of reality that Clocky is. Where it's like, if you hit, you know, these prerequisites of being pure and kind-hearted, well-spirited, then you can see them. You know, maybe Misha is similar to that, which is part of the reason there's also a theory about Misha maybe being the watchmaker. You know, this tall tale that nobody, you know, knows for sure is true or not. We could have both met before since MC used to be a part of Stellar Hunters and we just can't remember each other. That was my initial theory craft on this emo, and I don't think it's crazy, but since then, I have been a little bit more swayed the other way. Yo, Panda Bear, thank you for the lurky lurk. I've been swayed a bit more that would be the too obvious answer. Now, I'm not saying that that is an obvious answer, but I think Hoyoverse in general and the devs are extremely clever. And, you know, the fact that red herrings have been mentioned so much throughout this story quest, I think that they are too giving us red herrings as a player base, hence the 1.6 live stream, which seemed to indicate that A, B, and C were all going to happen, when in reality, ever since we've arrived, X, Y, and Z have occurred. Cupcake, you should go back and watch through that scene again. If you pay attention to it, nobody is looking at Misha. And in the instances where it looks like they're looking at Misha, they're actually like looking at Acheron. Or you can make sense of it that they're looking at Acheron. But yeah, we're the only ones that ever actually address Misha. There's nobody else in the party, Firefly, Acheron, or the goons, that are talking directly to Misha. Okay, White Knight, the song played during the trailer for 2.0, and that was described as Hoyoverse as the anime opening for the upcoming story arc, features some lyrics that support this approach. Tick and Tock, once more you're hosting a magic show I cannot escape. So I think what they're saying here is if there's multiple time loops, right? And there's multiple versions of these things happening at once, well, TikTok, once again, we're here, and this is a show that I cannot, you know, break free of, more or less. Also, this is the scene in question right here. Before this happens, the goons are like standing over here, and although you may get the impression, as did I the first time playing through, that they're looking at Misha because Misha is worried, they're actually addressing Acheron, and they'd be looking at Acheron, you know, in the same direction that they could be looking at Misha. Just something to chew on. Eventually poses the idea that Acheron may be the emanator of finality. Terminus, the eon of finality, constantly travels backwards through time. This is where these couple theories that we've been referencing kind of collide. And the same may be true for Acheron. She could know the future, hence her guidance of our decisions, but be ignorant of what we know as the past. Hence her real shock about Firefly's death, but her comment about not having a choice about preventing it, with the creature possibly having a role to play later on. I'm sure that it will. If Firefly is connected to Sam and the Stellaron Hunters, another theory that's been bouncing around, her sacrifice might have been part of the script provided by their leader Ilio for this operation. This is an interesting wrinkle that's being brought up here that I personally hadn't considered. I'm curious what you guys think about this. If Firefly is Sam, and if Sam, you know, we know is part of the Stellaron Hunters, is listening to Ilio, it could be what this is essentially insinuating, that the reason that Firefly didn't really put up a fight and was essentially standing with a target on her chest, no pun intended, when, you know, we showed up to essentially see the tragedy, it could be that Ilio's like, hey, this is what's got to happen, and they're essentially just following throughout the plan. We don't know much of Destiny's Slave, but it's clear that he can see branches of the future, so he might be related to finality as well. If it's not in the script, why should it matter? See, so like, it could be that Firefly is upset because like, oh, we just had this time together, but my time is, you know, it's GG's. Long story short, we may be in a time loop being guided towards a predetermined ending by people who have already seen the future. Or this is all a dream, within a dream, within a dream, a concept that has been all over the place in Penacony as well. At the moment, all we can do is interpret the information we got and have fun doing so. Chat, what do you guys think of this article? I think this is pretty solid. Nice. I think, again, it's not totally in line with the theory craft that we had kind of come up with ourselves, but it shares a lot of parallels to the things that we had talked about. And the thing that I appreciate the most out of it is the fact that it's considering the idea that it's not just us moving one direction and a character like Acheron, for example, moving in an opposite direction, but we could be moving in the same direction up to a certain point multiple times, right? And what we're doing now is just playing through one rendition of that, whereas that's why all the other characters that we're interacting with seem like maybe they know things that we don't. Maybe they have ideas that seem impossible to know what that idea may be. Also a dialogue that Firefly felt like something wasn't what was agreed upon, that maybe you're finding out that she yeah, maybe need to steal Ilio's script and get bangers back to HSR. Oh my gosh. Excuse me. One bangers back to back. Crazy. If it turns out that Acheron is an emanator of literally any other eon, then this theory is kind of cooked. I agree, but also so is the theory that we put together. I do like that theory largely, that she has something to do with finality, because it's something that really hasn't happened much in the game yet, and we do know that she is essentially masquerading as a Galaxy Ranger, or maybe she just doesn't know that she's a Galaxy Ranger because she hasn't gotten to that point in the past where she becomes a Galaxy Ranger just yet. So, I mean, to me, it does help tie things together, but I would like to give HSR and Hoyoverse all the credit that I believe they are due, and they do a great job of not letting us predict what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Even if it feels like they're leading us one way, it's always really hard to predict exactly what's going to happen. Nice. So, cool theory craft in my opinion. Thank you guys for, you know, hanging out and discussing that, listening to it. I'll be curious to see how much of that is accurate versus how much of what we predicted is accurate.